Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine.
MotorWeek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com.
Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Welcome to MotorWeek podcast number 363. I am indeed your host, John Davis, and welcome to a special edition in a series of podcasts to celebrate our 45th anniversary season. And with that, we are also recording a video version of this podcast, so if you want to watch it, you can do so at MotorWeek's YouTube channel. So, if we are doing a special video podcast, it must be because we have a very special guest, and indeed we do. Our anniversary season is a great time to take a look back on how we got to where we are today, and what better way to do that is than hear from some of the crew that helped bring this show to life and last for 45 years. So for the next year, we will be periodically having MotorWeek alumni on the podcast, both audio and video, to reminisce about their experiences from over the years before MotorWeek, during MotorWeek, and afterward. Today, we are joined by one of our very first FYI feature reporters who was with MotorWeek for 11 years in the late 80s and early to the 90s and traveled the globe for us to report on exciting automotive events like the Camel Trophy. She's looking at us like this, but also enlighten us on the latest consumer reporting. In fact, largely defined how MotorWeek approached the automotive lifestyle, and then and now she embraced it so totally. She's still a very good friend, and if you haven't guessed it already, here is welcome to the one and only Lisa Barrow. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're delighted to have you. And by the way, we're also joined by our producer of this podcast today, our digital producer, Jessica Ray, who will be here sort of to make sure if you and I keep moving this along in the right direction. And really, this is a conversation with you. So everybody's probably just incredibly curious about you. Those that have watched the show for a long time, of course, may know you. But an awful lot of our fans are relatively new to the show, and they've seen you on some of our retro reviews and say, just who is that lady there and where is she going this time? Let's start even before the beginning. What was your background before you joined Maryland Public Television and MotorWeek?
Well, I blame it all on my grandfather.
You got to blame something on someone.
Well, my grandfather and his brother, they owned Barrow Brothers Rambler dealership in Oak Park, Illinois. So I think I had the car gene for
I don't think I knew this.
And I found a picture of it online. There was a photograph, so I have that somewhere. But so because of that, trickled down to my dad, and my dad's a total car nut. So then I became a car nut. And when you hired me, it's gonna make me cry.
Oh, yeah, well, when I hired you, I had gone out into the parking lot to see what people drove. And you were driving a Pontiac Fiero, which I think, maybe except for whatever I was driving, was like the only sporty vehicle in the parking lot. I think there were a couple of Mustangs, of course, that like Craig Singhouse obviously had a Mustang.
Yeah.
But I saw that and I said, I think I went to the guard at the front desk. I said, who owns that car? And they said, well, Lisa, and she's down there in master control. But before I get to the Fiero, what did you own before that? If you had this automotive gene, did it manifest itself?
My favorite car was my Mazda RX-7. Manual, transmission, bright red. I love that car. But the problem was you sit so low in it, and my legs are so long. Every time I let the clutch out, it would pop my kneecap. And for a year, I did that to my knee to the point where I could barely walk. So then that had to go, and then it was replaced by the Fiero. So.
But when you owned the Fiero, you were already working at MPT doing what?
I was in master control at that point, part of the engineering department. And
which is so different than what you would be eventually doing on camera. That's engineering. That's like logistics and.
But she was the announcer for the station.
That's right, live
So you were the live announcer back in those days when you had a master control director. And master control, for those of you not in television, that's kind of where the brain center for every television operation, where stuff comes in and goes out to the transmitters. And you were the master control director. You had to keep track of all the programming that we showed every day and all the announcements. And many of those announcements you did either pre-recorded or live, so you were effectively what we used to call the booth announcer, because a lot of it was done in a booth. And so everyone that watched MPT knew your voice. And of course, when I found out that you were driving something not ordinary, something other than, an Econobox, and had this wonderful voice, it's like, take me to her, please.
Well, I remember when Charlotte Nichols
she was our first FYI reporter.
And she stopped by Master Control, and she's like, "Oh, I'm leaving." I'm like, "You're leaving?" And my wheels are turning. I'm like, "You're leaving?" And I just remember putting story ideas on your desk. You were downstairs, I think.
Yeah.
Story
Still
ideas, and I mean, thinking, I'm like calling my dad, and. Yeah, it was
see,
like,
I
this
remember
job
just
is perfect for me.
I remember totally the opposite. I remember begging you to come down and give us a try.
Funny. Well, I had people in the edit suite teaching me how to edit, so I could prove that I could actually, put a story together. So it was.
So if you were in master control for about 6 years before you started working at MotorWeek, you were working at MPT around the time MotorWeek began, like in its earliest of days.
Yeah, because didn't I start with MotorWeek '88?
I think so. I think you came just after we had begun. Because we started in '81. I don't remember.
So like
exactly.
the whole time, were you kind of like looking at MotorWeek and being like, it would be really cool to work with them?
Because when I would go home and see my dad, we'd watch it. He watched it long before I did, though. He was on it. He loved watching you guys. He did. He really did. That would influence the different cars that he gravitated toward.
Wow.
Did Charlotte kind of push you to go down and apply?
Well, she came in and said that, basically, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you're out of here. Well, then I'm like,
the wheels are turning.
And those were the days
job
when,
is open.
we were still, how can I say, television was different in those days. So when you were going to come with us, and Charlotte had already been through this, you weren't by yourself. You worked with a producer.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you ended up forming a team with Susan Childress.
Yes.
And Susan is, God rest her soul, she's no longer with us. But this dream team came to MotorWeek, and I thought my life had just been made so much easier because literally you two would come up with wonderful ideas and you would go. But what was it like on your side?
Do you mean with our relationship?
Yeah, and also when you
would
come up with ideas.
Yeah, we would brainstorm all the time. We were always bouncing stuff off of each other, and then we would bring videographers in too and say, would this work? Would this actually work? Would it look good? So we actually made it. It was a lot of teamwork, I think, that went into it.
Incredible teamwork.
And then Susan and I would split the stories up. We'd decide, okay, she's like, I'd like to do that one. And then I'd say, I'd like to do this one. So sometimes I was a producer as well as on camera, and sometimes she was producing it. So it just depended on who wanted to do which story.
Do you remember any butterflies in those early days about going out on some of the shoots and how just learning by doing? Because we really just sort of threw you into it, said go to it. We need this many segments a year. Go.
And there are a lot of them.
Well, I always go back. Yeah. I always go back to the tank. Like, what was I thinking?
Oh, yes.
That was Pascal Leonis had that idea, if I recall.
The videographer.
I'm like, okay, I'll drive a tank. And then I remember sitting in the cockpit of this tank that weighed, what? I don't know.
Who knows?
65 tons or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I doing in here? I was like at a moment of freak out, and then I'm like, I got to do it now.
To get a feel for how well the M1A2 performs under strenuous engine and transmission loads, the place to go is Churchville. The M1A2 was incredibly stable as we pounded around the Churchville course with hairpin turns and downhill runs complete with moguls that got us airborne. The rides at Disney World will never be the same.
But then the controls are like it's just like a couple of different modes, and you pull this elastic piece out and move it between the gears that you want.
It was easy to drive.
Yeah, and then it's motorcycle grips.
You weren't driving slow either, too. There were some shots where you're rolling.
Well, you're doing about probably 20 miles an hour in this thing. That's
your
like
head's popped out of the.
Well, if you went too slow, it was harder. If you got a little speed, it smoothed it out, and you could go,
But also, who can say that they've driven
a tank?
An M1 Abrams tank.
In those days, the M1 had a bad reputation because it was considered this big, Army tank that was way over budget and everything else. So they were actually interested in good promotion for it. So they allowed us or allowed you anyway, to have access to it. But while you're doing this, did you start to develop this sense of adventure that you eventually became so well known for? And I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I was exposed to so many different opportunities with the show that, it's kind of like you do little baby steps, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is like a wide world filled with all kinds of adventures that I loved and would work for the show.
And now let's get to that. You became the MotorWeek globe-trotting ambassador on so many exciting overseas shoots. Some of them, the car makers would basically invite you to, to help us. So, because we certainly couldn't afford to send you on all those jaunts ourselves.
Right.
How did that start, or do you remember?
I think it started with Land Rover.
Land Rover in those days with Bill Baker as their public affairs guru. He put together some of the most remarkable overseas trips to promote their new vehicles.
And he understood video.
He understood. He was from television.
That was his background.
Yeah.
So, but he understood how it goes together, and he understood what made a story really great visually, and he wanted to go on all these. He wanted to go there too. So he would come up with an idea, and then off we'd go with usually small groups.
Tell us some of the adventures.
Oh my gosh!
Some of your best moments on them.
I'm trying to think of
maybe your best hair moments, maybe.
Oh no, that's not fair. But I was going to ask it anyway.
Wait. I had to. There were so many things. Last night I crawled in bed and I was thinking, what the heck? What? There's so many stories.
Well, there is the pith helmet that was Mongolia. When you were in Mongolia and you came back and your stand-ups.
That was a Bill Baker experiment.
That was a Bill Baker show. No, I remember that trip because the invitation came in and I thought about going. And Bill said, no, I want Lisa. And to be fair to Bill, they were short on rooms, and you had to. They needed someone to room with Jean Lindemood.
Yeah, Jean Lindemood.
Lindemood Jennings, and they needed someone that would room with Jean, and so I wouldn't fit. But Bill loved you. I mean, I must tell you, your biggest fan was probably Bill Baker, besides me. But you said when you did the story, the pith helmet, I couldn't see your eyes. And I remember coming in your office and saying, what were you thinking? And and you told me it was the hair.
Over the next 17 days, two-man teams from 16 nations will take Land Rovers through some of the most challenging terrain known to man. It's 1,000 miles of dense jungle, treacherous mountain passes, and leeches that drop from the trees above.
The hair was out of control because there was no place to wash your hair or fix your hair. It's and putting makeup on, forget about it. There was no makeup on. It's the opposite of what you would normally do with your stand-up.
But you were the lone, you and Jean in that case were the lone women on these trips. And you actually were one of the first globe-trotting female automotive journalists out there. I mean, it was a small group in those days. What was that like?
You know what? I was treated really well. Lots of times it would be just me and the rest of the group are men.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I might end up with Denise McCluggage.
Right.
or maybe Jean, Linda Moon Jennings. But for the most part, it was me. So, and they, I was treated like a princess. I mean, who's going to argue?
Well, it must have been strange, too, because, you know, now it's so different with video and in the automotive realm. But, like, back then when you were doing a lot of these stories, you were probably the only one with a cameraman with you.
Well, and sometimes she wouldn't even have a camera person with her from here because Bill would record. Range Rover used their own crew, so you often would use theirs. Okay. So she was out there pretty much by herself.
I mean,
that was it was Vermont Studios.
Sally and Alan.
Yes. Very good for you remembering that. Yeah. Wonderful husband and wife team.
Oh yeah, they were awesome. And you could just say to them, or we would, you would have a conversation with them. It's like, I'd really like to have this shot, this shot, this shot.
Okay, adventures. Tell us some of the adventures. Even if you have to use your cheat sheet, that's okay. We can do that.
Well,
because you traveled so much.
One that sticks in my mind was I did a story on the Lamborghini factory. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that? I don't remember that.
The moment you hit the autostrada, you know there's something special about Italy. There's an excitement in the air, and it's no wonder that some of the world's most exciting cars, like this Diablo SE, are built here.
They don't really have their own test track. They test on the roads, the public roads. So Valentino Balboni was their test driver. Yeah. And so he grabs it was a Lamborghini Diablo SE Yoda.
Oh, that's pretty good. You remember all that?
I'm like, okay, I'm in. So we did a tour of the factory, which was kind of interesting because it's all very, they're all just building everything by hand. There's no big machines or anything like that. So that was interesting to see how the factory went together. And they gave me some little leather Lamborghini patches that go in the seats. So I think I still have one of those somewhere. But so they had this Diablo, and the head engineer's like, do you want to go out? You want to go for a ride? I'm like, yeah, I'll go for a ride. And on the public road, we're flying. It was crazy. It was so much fun, and he was in control the whole time, of course, and no one pulled us over, so that was good. I don't even think they would have ever pulled him over.
I have a feeling in that locale, they probably knew exactly what was going on.
Oh, so was that in Italy?
Yeah, that was right in Italy by the Lamborghini factory.
Their roads aren't known for being the best, I will say. I don't know. That was my experience when I've driven in Italy. I don't know if that was.
Yeah,
but their main rival, Ferrari, has this big test track.
They do.
And so Lamborghini's just out there basically on real roads, which you have to give them credit for in some aspects, but just don't get in their way, I guess. I honestly don't know if that's still the case or not.
If you bought one of the vehicles, you'd be driving it on the road.
That's true.
It was actually
that's true.
A pretty good thing.
I suspect nowadays they have, since they've been bought and sold a couple times since then, they have access to a more controlled environment. But okay, you spent a lot of time in the Mediterranean part of the world. Were you in Morocco once, twice? What was that? I think that was I remember the first time might have been an Audi trip.
Well, the first Morocco trip I think that might have been Range Rover.
And then I know Audi took you at one point too.
Well, then I rode motorcycles there.
Yeah.
So that was after,
Yeah.
And this is my goof-off period of life. And that's when I did that.
But there's we even have a still somewhere in the office, Lisa on a camel.
Yes. I'm glad I have that shot, but riding a camel.
So you would
I can't imagine getting up on a camel.
I'm not saying I would never do it again for a shot of some sort if there's a group of people that wants to do it, but,
Who was in control of that one?
No, you should do it once.
Yeah.
You should do it once.
Any places else you went that didn't sound right, that are... if basically, you've been places that most people have on their bucket lists and never get to check off.
Well,
it's places, but also like things. Like you've done a lot of things too.
Well, because once I kind of switched over into the motorcycle section of life, and
let's talk about that. That really sort of started after you left the show.
Yes.
Right. Why don't you give us how you got in?
Well,
went from 4 wheels to 2 wheels.
There's a probably the most famous motorcyclist that of all, I would say, is probably Tiffany Coates. And so a couple of my friends in New Jersey and we connected, and my one friend in Australia, we connected with Tiffany Coates, and we started going around the world doing these motorcycle trips, and Tiffany would be the leader. And the first one was India, because we went to the highest motorable pass in India, which at the time was Kardun Law. Now I understand that somebody else just kind of put some extra rocks on top of some of the other peaks to make those taller. No, I don't know if that's true, but
It's a good story.
so Tiffany, I mean, I've been all over the world with Tiffany. We just did Nepal with her. And got back a couple months ago, and that was fascinating. Just the language and the people and the colors, the dress, the terrain was awesome. It was tough though,
So when you were out there and you've done Nepal, and I know you rode across Australia.
Yes. Yeah, that was just two of my girlfriends, and we're like, let's just ride in Australia. And one of my girlfriends lives there, so that helped. So we had a backup plan.
But the logistics, of getting the bikes there and then maintaining them once they are there, was that ever a problem? Or you just, there was enough help locally, or what?
We would typically get the motorcycles locally.
Yeah. Oh, you would? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, for like India, we had a local guy that got all the bikes, and they were all Royal Enfields, and they were a mess. He would take these hammers and beat them along the way, and you're climbing to the top of the mountain, and he'd say, "Hey, hold on a minute, Lisa." Bam, 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 bam.
What they used to call a persuader.
It was great.
Big hammer.
But that was just, and everybody was on Royal Enfields for that first trip, and that was where I had my first water crossing. Oh my gosh! I think I sent you guys some.
We're not talking about a puddle here.
No, and I'd never done a water crossing before on a motorcycle, and I'm like sweating, getting up to it, and the water's rushing down from the top of the mountain, and you had to go when the area that you had to go through, you had to really go through it, and then it kept rushing down that way. And I'm like, I'm getting through that water. I don't know how yet, but anyway, I just floored it. I got through the water, and then I kept going, and I didn't take my hands. I was like, just didn't take my hands off of the accelerator, and all of a sudden I'm running into a rock and fell over.
Ooh.
I sent you guys some pictures of that. That was ridiculous.
Now, you got in your fascination with motorcycling. You owe that to your husband, Jack, right?
I do.
Now, tell us the story about. You kind of went around Jack's back on that, right?
I decided that because he was, he'd been riding for a while. So
and I should point out, Jack's done some land speed record runs.
Yeah,
so
he's gone over 200 miles an hour on a motorcycle. He's crazy.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Good matchup.
I can't hold a candle to him. But for MotorWeek, I covered the motorcycle safety school, and the guys are like, at the end of it, well, you gotta come back and take the class. And so anyway, I went back and I went back and took the class and got my license. And
when he was gone one weekend.
Yeah, he was gone.
Yeah.
And I thought, and when he came home, I had the license, and then I'm like, I need a bike. So I got a little Yamaha XT 225. It was a great starter bike. It's good. It was good for me because I have long legs, and it just fit me really well. And then if I dropped it, it didn't weigh anything. I just picked it right back up and kept going. But it was a good way to learn. So it was. I like the idea of learning, with layers, and it doesn't matter what it is.
It's good advice.
But you learn layers as opposed. And some people like to be thrown into something, but I like having layers, and you learn and you pick up what works and what doesn't work, the safer way to do something, or you understand how much you can get away with, I guess, is in the end. But yeah, layers for anything, not just riding a motorcycle, driving a car, or anything.
Well, it's funny that you did a story for MotorWeek that was related to motorcycles.
Yes.
That eventually impacted a decision that you eventually made, and now you ride. But a lot of the stories that you ended up doing, a lot of FYI stories, were like these really helpful consumer reporting bites.
Yes.
Where, I've one's off the top of my head, a lot of car buying advice, whether used, new, a lot of safety stuff.
That was the concept for the FYI segments, and still is, really.
So my question is when you were, I'm assuming you were learning a lot while you were doing research for.
Oh yeah, well, and Susan and I both, Susan Childress and I both, and because we would split the segments up and we would take turns producing the segments. So
was it things you wanted to learn, or things that you
well,
thought
we would
other
usually
people
meet.
would
We would meet with John, and then we would discuss story ideas.
Yeah,
and then he had the final say.
Yeah, but you could always tell when any feature reporter comes in and they give you a list of stories. When they get to the ones that they really want to do, that are going to have great enthusiasm. Lisa's face would light up. Just like it is right at the moment, and so you knew that's the one you had to go with. So it wasn't a real tough decision on my part.
The one that stands out to me was the airbag story.
Ah, yes.
Do you remember
back when airbags were a newfangled item on car, and very few cars had them? Go ahead.
No, they I was with I did it with GM. I think.
Yep.
I think it was GM and. Sitting in there and waiting, they had the airbag ready to get deployed on me, and sitting there and
you don't know what's going to happen.
You don't really know what it's like, and they were nervous because it's coming into your face.
Right.
They didn't want me to sue them, which I wouldn't have done. But anyway, because I was dumb enough to get in the seat to begin with, but. It's over so quickly, and it's really just a bunch of it's almost like smoke. But when we came back here and did a slow-mo of it in the edit suites, and you see it popping out, and my face is just, this horrible look on my face like I'm in pain, which I wasn't, but it's interesting how the reaction.
Yeah, to anyone that's never had that experience. In the movies, they always have the airbags go off and just stay there, but they don't. They're there and gone.
Yeah.
In just a second. There are many fans of yours who bemoan the fact that you ever left the show. When it came time for you to leave, to be fair, part of it, the show was in one of its many throes of financial problems. It's public television, so we're all used to that. But can you think about that time when you made the decision to lead and figured out where you were going from there? What was going through your mind besides possibility of being unemployed?
Well, when I left, you can blame Mike Galen.
And we should say the legendary public relations gentleman, Mike Galen, basically is, if you're on the East Coast of the United States and you're in the automotive business, everybody knows Mike.
Everybody knows Mike. Yeah. Good guy. Such a good guy.
But I was so mad at him for coming after you.
Well, I remember him calling me. He's like, hey, what'd you think about living in California? I'm like, what? Yeah, living in California. I just lost my West Coast PR manager, and the office is in Beverly Hills, 1 block west of Rodeo Drive.
Right.
Like, wow.
And Mike was representing Chrysler.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and Mike called me and he said basically, what he was after. I think he actually asked me if it was okay, but I'm not sure that really would have mattered.
Sure, he did.
Yeah, but Mike's always been a gentleman, still is, and I was heartsick, but at the same time, who am I to stand in way of anybody's dream? So when you decided to leave, that was a very sad time for us.
Listen, I had a great time here.
Yeah.
I absolutely did. Look at just traveling the world and all the people. It was the staff was always awesome, and I learned so much.
But you went when an automotive journalist goes with a car company, it's often referred to as going to the dark side.
Oh, yeah.
But what was it like? How did you handle that transition from being what has been described to me as a taker to a giver?
It was different for me because the journalists were already my friends.
Everybody knew you.
It wasn't one of those things where she's just a PR person coming in.
She doesn't know anything.
Right. I didn't have to deal with that because I
have to tell you, a lot of it's just you, though.
I'm going to hire him as my PR person.
Well, you're disarming, but you're right. Everybody knew Lisa because of going to the press events and your exploits on video and so forth.
Well, and I met a lot of people through you. You were introducing me like crazy. So, but the journalists, I knew them already. And there were some people on the West Coast that I didn't necessarily know.
Right.
But that didn't take a long time to do that.
And then you eventually came back to the East Coast. And along the way, you met your future husband.
I did.
Who was this incredible daredevil in his own right.
We had him come in, and he was part of a. He was a spokesperson. I had him in a story, and he did a great job. And one thing led to another, and I had to marry him. He can fix anything, but he's a crazy daredevil. I mean, he really is. So it's that was really.
What brand was he? Was he a spokesperson for a specific brand? So he was Jeep.
He's Jeep.
Didn't he? He worked on Wrangler.
Yeah, he did. He did all the. I think he worked on all the Jeeps at that point in time. And I always love the story where they were out doing testing, and something's going wrong with one of the vehicles, and everybody's panicking, and Jack's like, I can fix it. He crawls under the Jeep. All the executives are standing around. He crawls under the Jeep, fixes it, gets out. All right, we can go now.
And their eyeballs are popping out of their head.
Yeah, I'm sure he scored some points with his boss for that one.
Can you remember, while you were doing public affairs for Chrysler, any either really embarrassing moments or just moments you don't want to remember or you'd rather forget? Something that sticks out that was made that part of your career is so truly memorable, besides meeting Jack.
You must have had a whole other bit of traveling that you.
Oh yeah, it was up in
that as
I had
well.
I had the West Coast,
and then you had almost the whole East Coast. You had everything from DC up, I guess.
Yeah. DC up, but the West Coast is just laid back.
Yeah, very different vibe.
I would do a lot of programs in Beverly Hills and have because there were a ton of journalists in Santa Monica, so it was. Very concentrated with journalists. And then San Francisco has a great group of journalists there as well. And then Seattle and Portland. So there were basically 3 regions that I traveled back and forth between.
Tough to make the transition from East Coast to West Coast and back again?
I remember early on, all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the one that has to get everything for these journalists now. What the heck? Because before I was getting waited on hand and foot, which was
that's
really
what I was
nice.
talking about.
Yeah, no. That took me a little bit of time. Not too much, because you got to get over it. But all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, you need a Kleenex? How could you Kleenex? Just crazy stuff.
All right.
It must have been really interesting when you moved over to the PR side as time went on, because I don't know, how long exactly were you with Chrysler? Because, it went through a lot of iterations. Eventually, you retired with it being known as Stellantis, but
oh my gosh.
It was quite a while.
25 years?
A lot longer than you were with us, I think.
You left in 90, 98. You retired in 20.
I'm so bad with so bad with the numbers. Probably
around 20, 25.
Probably.
Maybe a little under that.
Between 20 and 25.
So it must have been interesting, doing that for almost 25 years and
seeing how the business changed.
The business changed, but there's a whole new generation of also automotive journalists who probably grew up watching you on TV.
Yeah. Everybody at MotorWeek gets that.
Yeah.
No, I know, but
When
like
you've been
going to like the PR side where now you're interacting with them in that opposite way. That must have been kind of interesting.
But also,
like coming up to you being like, Lisa, I remember watching you, and when I was just a little kid.
Right, a little kid. I did get that.
But I hear that same thing about you from young women auto journalists today, that many of them got the bug after watching you do, exploits with Range Rover halfway around the world or whatever. And they basically said, that's the job I want when I grow up. So,
well, and they're really lucky today because there's so many different ways to get your stories out.
Oh yeah.
There weren't that many back in the day,
It was it was print, or
and you physically had to bring the tape or film back. You couldn't just basically get an internet connection and send back the file.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now it's like they can do all kinds of things, and I watch them on social media, and people are posting all the time with and they put good stories together, and there's so many more women now. I just love that. It's just because for a while there just weren't.
No,
I think
it was a handful.
Yeah, the social media part of it has really been good for.
You mentioned Denise McCluggage, one of the most legendary names in automotive journalism in the United States, as well as one of the first true women competitors. She basically hung right in there with the Formula One teams back in her day. You were paired with Denise in Germany for an anniversary of the original Benz automobile. Do you remember anything about that? That was that was a big coup for us to get you on that trip. I remember that.
That was for the Berta Benz rally.
The Berta Benz rally.
And I can still hear the engineer saying, "You'll be driving a 1940 Mercedes-Benz Kahnwagen," with his high voice like that. So something like that. I forget the exact year. And then I'm paired with Denise, who I was
we were in awe of Denise.
But I
rightfully
was
so.
nervous. I was so nervous. And so she's she's driving. I'm trying to navigate, but it was kind of scary for me because she was this icon.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I'm sitting here in this car with Denise McCluggage, and so we did the whole rally, and everything was great, and we ended up becoming fast friends. And I went out to see her in Santa Fe and hung out with her, and we did I did some stuff with her out there. And
every time I saw her, she asked about you. Every time.
But at first, it's like Denise, this icon, and I'm like just this little.
Any other moments like that? Like if I put you on the spot and said, what was your most memorable time or adventure? Is it anything we haven't talked about that you were on the MotorWeek staff?
Wow. Well, even just to go back before that, the whole off-roading idea, that was Mark Smith. Remember Mark Smith?
Yes, I do.
And he was in Georgetown, California, and that's the first time. And I don't know how we ended up there. Maybe it came from you, but we went out. Susan and I went out there, and we were gonna drive the Rubicon Trail, and he's the one that orchestrated that whole thing. And when you are in Jeeps going over the Rubicon Trail, and we were so green at that point, it blew our minds. It was great. It was awesome. There was going over these. They always say Jeep-sized boulders. It's true. But that was so much fun. So he stands out to me as somebody who definitely influenced.
He put the bug in you, didn't he?
He did. And you look at things and you're like, there's no way I can do it. And it was crazy terrain. I don't know if I've done anything that hard since then.
I think what's really cool about like a lot of the stories that you ended up doing is like such a wide variety of experiences that you got to do, but I felt like you were very fearless in a lot of them. That's like a great example is like the Bertle Ruse racing school. You get like in an open wheel car.
Explain. All right, Bertle Ruse, just for everybody who doesn't know, renowned racing competitor. He had a driving school up at the Pocono Raceway up in Pennsylvania. And Bertel Roos was just kind of an icon for all of us at MotorWeek because he taught us so much about professional driving. Take it from there.
Well, Susan and I did that together. Susan Childress.
Yes, there's footage of you guys both drove it.
And Susan in the car.
Yeah.
I have a still of that.
Yeah. And we were like, when we got there, we were freaking out. We're like, what are we crazy? What are we doing this for? But we had been practicing this bench racing. And I don't even remember who taught us bench racing, but they gave us the layout of the track, and so we're closing our eyes and we're imagining going through all the different corners, and which actually that whole thing really works. But both of us were like, what are we doing? And then we loved it. It was so much fun. And, it's the whole idea of the layers. You go around slowly, and then you get a little more speed and a little more speed, and then we were flying around that track.
Open wheel cars are intoxicating. I mean, I think that's where you probably got your desire to go motorcycling.
You know what? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Because that's definitely a standout. That was in my little list of little standout things.
Did you do the slide car while you were there? The car with that had the gimbals on all four wheels?
I think he took us out in that. Wasn't that something where they could take
I think so,
out?
yes.
I think it was we got a ride.
The whole idea was it's to treat you car control, because just if you turn the steering wheel too much, it basically goes into a spin.
Yeah, that was fun. That's actually a good teaching lesson. That was that doing something on a track for the first time, that was a good place to do it. Plenty of support and instruction was really good. And he taught us all about bench racing, and Susan and I are diligently going through the track. We're not going to screw this up.
That must have been so fun for you two to be so close and be good friends to go experience something like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there were no secrets between us.
It was the dream team for MotorWeek, and really still is. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks so very, very much for coming down and being a part of our podcast. This was truly memorable.
Thanks for having me.
Well,
it was great.
And to all of you out there, thanks for watching. I want to thank also the sponsors of our podcast and all things MotorWeek, the folks over at Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and of course, TireRack.com. We know all of our viewers and listeners appreciate your dedication to all things MotorWeek. Also, don't forget, regardless of whether you watch MotorWeek on TV or your phone or tablet, you can stay up with all of our recent road tests and features, including our podcasts, by downloading our totally free MotorWeek app. It's the quickest way to stay up with us, whether it's audio or video. Thanks, Lisa, again for being with us today. It's wonderful to have you a part of our 45th anniversary celebration. And thanks, Jessica, for basically anchoring our fan seat here at the table. And thank you for listening to the podcast today. Now, if you are wondering where MotorWeek can be seen on your local public television station, go to our website, motorweek.org, click on the tab Watch MotorWeek, then enter your zip code for the days and times in your area, or hop over to our cable partner, Racer Network, at racer.com for their schedule, as well as the latest in motorsports. You can also watch current episodes of MotorWeek on the PBS app, which is also free, and you can download that right to your smart TV. We're also proud to announce that recent seasons of MotorWeek are available on the free streaming service Tubi. Lastly, all of the individual road tests and features are also available at youtube.com/MotorWeek. If you've got a screen, you can watch MotorWeek. Thanks to Jessica again for producing, audio engineer Nicole Phillips-Naylor, podcast creator Bob Mixter. Also, the fastest way to find car reviews, be sure to include MotorWeek in your search engine. I'm John Davis. Thank you for being a part of MotorWeek.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com. Visit our website at motorweek.org for more car reviews and the latest automotive news. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station or the MotorWeek app.